My name is Abbie Richie, and I'm the founder and CEO of Senior Savvy. And you can find me right here every Tuesday talking with people who are engaged in the age tech innovation space as it relates to senior living. Before I bring on my guests, let's go ahead and run our intro. Before I bring my guests on, I want to talk briefly about this topic. Today, we're talking about Orphan Tech, how to prevent your technology solution from being kicked to the wayside and being forgotten about, especially with such a high turnover in senior living. So we're going to talk about Orphan Tech, about keeping your technology solution relevant, front of mind, and allowing everyone at the community to know how to use your technology. I want to go ahead and bring my guests on now. First, I've got Katie Griffith of Bright Solutions. Hello, and welcome back to Tech Tuesday, Katie.
Thanks, Abbie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And then I also want to bring on TK King of Accushield, who is a new guest of ours. Welcome, TK.
Hey, Abbie. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, you are so welcome. So today we're going to talk about keeping your technology relevant, keeping it front of mind, about training people internally. And that's why I brought Katie and TK on today. So first, Katie, could you go ahead and introduce yourself to our viewers, please?
Absolutely. I'm Katie Griffith with Bright Solutions. We do technology consulting exclusively in the senior living industry. And we're an unbiased third party. So we don't work with just particular vendors. We play matchmaker with the senior living provider to help them identify the best solution for their operations. And then we help them with an effective adoption strategy to get the results that they're expecting from those technology investments.
And when you work with a community, are you typically installing several technology solutions at once?
Yeah, it varies. So if it's technology being used in and around a senior living community, we get involved. So it's just about, having a strategy for getting the most out of those technology solutions, whether it's business platforms or resident-facing technologies and anything in between. So we're kind of working with residents, staff, administration, corporate headquarters. What data do they need? What does the resident need? So really just addressing all the needs all throughout the levels of the organization.
Thank you. Thank you. And TK King, please introduce yourself to our viewers.
Sure. Thank you. So I'm TK King. I'm the Vice President of Healthcare Strategy with Accushield. We are primarily a visitor management solution. We offer a lot of solutions in our technology, but really the power is behind the data that we collect, really help promote and elevate safety and security, emergency preparedness. And we're really hyper-focused right now on staffing and the impact on quality of life for residents. So really happy to be here today.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're here. I've always admired what Accushield is doing and just think that you guys are top. So welcome to Tech Tuesday. I want to go ahead first and talk about what are some of the worst case scenarios when a new technology is introduced, installed, and then what happens? Katie, could you explain to us what are some of the worst case scenarios?
Yeah, absolutely. In general, and then I'll give a specific example, it's, leadership says, hey, we need this innovation. We need this new technology for our residents or for our staff. It's going to help us automate, help us do our work smarter, not harder. It's going to provide a new service or value to our residents or to our employees, making their lives easier. So the vision is there, and it is possible with the technology that they're investing in. But the problem is, a lot of times then we wait for the vendor to show up and kind of make all of our dreams come true. And there's a lot of work that has to happen, you know, between that vision and the reality. And so the provider really needs to stay in the driver's seat of how they're going to realize their vision. We need to get stakeholders, you know, all throughout the organization who are excited about it as well, which involves effectively communicating to the different stakeholder groups as to why they should be excited about this. And so a good example of, you know, seeing a technology like the excitement and the vision, and then it just kind of falling flat is with resident engagement platforms. So usually you have like that mobile app, right, that the residents can get on their device, or their family members can get on their device, their iPad, their smartphone, or the internet, you know, just on their computer. And so we, you know, we get them excited, we help them download the app, they get logged in. But if that content that you're pushing down to that app doesn't stay relevant, if there's not a reason that that resident wakes up in the morning and says, I want to go check that app and see, you know, what the trivia question is for the day, or the latest news, or what's on the menu for breakfast or for lunch today. If we're not keeping that content relevant and exciting and giving them a reason to go in there, then you're going to do all that work, and then the adoption is just going to plummet. You know, there'll be that initial excitement, and then all of a sudden it's like no one's really using the app. Why are we even maintaining it? So, and it takes a lot of work to keep the content relevant, right? But if you put a plan in place from day one, you're going to be able to be very organized, and it's a team effort, right? So, you know, don't just have one person entering all the information, for example. So, you know, having a good strategy and a good plan from day one, you're going to keep that content relevant and keep that engagement through the roof.
Now, I do know at many communities, an important question that a lot of residents will call the concierge for is, has the mail come in yet? So if the first place a community updates the mail status is on the app, then that's a reason that people will be checking in there regularly.
That's right.
Yeah, I know it's an important question. And TK, how about for you? Can you share with us some worst case scenario situations, please?
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, as a former provider of 18 years in the industry, I've got a lot of stories. But, you know, Accushield's a great example of that. A lot of folks know Accushield as a health screening solution. And, you know, the story is that we've been around for over 10 years now, elevating safety and security. And so while a lot of folks adopted Accushield during the pandemic, they've been blown away at realizing the other solutions that are available to them, you know, whether it's communication or policy management or just tracking third-party care. It's not something we commonly think about when we think about visitor management. You know, Katie hit the nail on the head, and that's really getting the buy-in from the beginning and having a plan. You know, it's vital to make sure your policies are considered whenever you're implementing solutions. And so you've really got to be involved with the vendor throughout the entire process. Otherwise, it's just sitting in a box or, you know, on your desktop, not being used, and you're paying for it. And there's no quality coming out of that solution for not just your staff, but for your residents.
Tell me, how much does staff turnover play into whether or not technology is going to be successful in the long run? Katie?
Yeah, great question. Do people have a lot of turnover? I haven't heard much about
it. Doesn't happen.
Not in this industry.
Yeah, okay, good. So we don't have to worry about it. Yes, that is huge. So this is my little soapbox that I get on with my clients, but we want to document, how does our organization use this technology? So if I'm a new DON and I, you know, it's my first day, and you say, oh, we use PCC, or we use, this point of care solution, or we use this fall detection solution. Well, that's great, but how are we using it? And so having an easily digestible, not a 30-page of a bunch of words, make it visually pleasing, gets to the point of how we use feature set by feature set this technology in our daily operations, because not everyone's daily operations are exactly the same, of course. So they can easily pick that up or sit down with someone to review it together, and they will, by the end of kind of reviewing it with someone, they'll know exactly how your organization leverages those various modules and features and functions within your organization, as well as roles and responsibilities, all along the way. So.
Jesse in the comments brought up a really good point about making the technology part of the culture. TK, how do you do that with Accushield?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's really goes back to the messaging. What is the purpose of the solution? And I like to use the acronym WIFMs, what's in it for me.
Mm-hmm.
If I can show a nurse or a concierge or even social services that by using this solution, whatever it is, it's creating some efficiencies for you. It's taking work out of your backpack while still elevating quality of life for your customers. That's how you integrate it into your culture. It's really supporting your mission through the care you provide and the services you provide.
And what about in terms of the staff turnover? How do you combat that?
Well, as a former provider, my education to my EDs was and my regions was always turnover is not an excuse to not use technology. The reality is that the best way to get ahead of that is during your onboarding process, and just making sure that while you're educating on your policies and procedures, you're explaining how you support those processes with technology. Not just here's a program you got to log into it and document. What's the purpose behind it and why is it important?
Gotcha. Thank you. Now, I want to shift the conversation a little bit to talk about some of the best case scenarios. And when it comes to introducing new features, for instance, TK, because I know Accushield has many more features than what it looks like. When it comes to introducing new features, what are some of the best case scenarios that you've been able to witness?
Yeah, it's a reoccurring theme, I think, in our call today, and that's, again, buy-in. Really, if you understand what your customers need, what your staff needs, you're going to use the system the way it's designed to be used. And so, we're hyper-focused on explaining the value of data and how our customers can use it just to promote quality of life. It all goes back to the messaging. Are you explaining the solution to your staff the right way? Do residents and family understand why you're using the solution? It's their home as well. So just kind of, really focusing on the messaging, in my experience, has always been successful.
And when you release a new message or a new feature, what is the most successful way to do that? And TK, if you want to take this one, and then Katie.
I think the sky's the limit. At this point, I think we could also try smoke signals and see how that goes. Really, I think the best thing is when you have somebody who's using the system the right way, getting everything out of it and then some. That's the success stories you should be sharing in your messaging. We can all sit in a webinar or in person and say that our solutions do the best thing, but it's the folks using it that matter the most.
And let's talk about the folks who are using it. So we probably have an internal champion, right? Someone on staff who is training people, as well as maybe a committee chair. What else is integral in that combination, Katie?
Yeah, absolutely. So once we go live with a platform or a system, that's not the end of it, right? And, we can't expect to just roll out every single feature and function on day one as well. So it's important to have oversight. I help my clients develop an oversight committee, as well as a communication flow. So I'll try to keep it brief, kind of explain both of those. But oversight committee, it's a sampling of people in the organization that are, maybe they'll meet once a month at the start, right after go live, and then after a year, maybe meet once a quarter. But let's say it's Accushield. So we're the oversight committee for Accushield. So we come together and we say, how are we doing? Are we leveraging it? Are there any communities not really, doing it? What can we do to help them, do better with the solution? But there should be someone on the committee who's in charge of communications back to the vendor. So you should have an account manager on the vendor side. And so that individual should be proactively looking for those release notes and new feature communications that do come out, but they get lost in the shuffle, right? And saying, oh my gosh, we should start using this new feature, and then talk to the committee about how would our organization best use this new feature. And, maybe you decide this isn't really for us, but maybe this other feature is. So you kind of make those decisions. And then, like TK said, it's all about communication. So now let's talk to our users and get them very excited about why they should be excited about that new feature, why it's going to make that person's life easier. And then again, have a plan for how you're going to use that feature in your daily operations. Update that adoption packet that, with that new feature and how our organization is going to use it. And then get the folks trained or get it built and implemented, whatever you need to do. So that committee is really going to help you continue to adopt more and more features and functionality of that solution. I don't know how many times I've had clients say, hey, we need a new system. Ours doesn't work for us anymore. Will you help us evaluate vendors? And I'm like, sure. What's going on? And they tell me, oh, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that. And I'm like, yeah, it does. It actually does a great job of those things. And they're like, really? We had no idea it does that. So, it's you've got to have some oversight and proactive, oversight of how you're continuing to adopt those platforms that you already have in place.
Now, you mentioned on a quarterly basis. TK, do you think that is frequent enough in order to remain relevant and remain useful at the community?
Yeah, it certainly can be. And I think to Katie's point, it really, matters on who's on that committee and what programs are appropriate for their review. If I had a marketing solution, I maybe wouldn't always pull in the clinical folks. It'll vary. So I think, back to Katie's point, it really matters who's involved. And that kind of determines how frequent you're going to do it. One of the things I recommend to every provider, and where it's appropriate, is to include your residents in those conversations as well. If they're using that program or it benefits them in any way, capturing their feedback, and then again, to Katie's point, sharing that with the vendor is vital. If you're not getting what you need and you don't tell the vendor, they're just not going to know.
Yeah, so many of these technology platforms, there are many people at the community. There's many people in the company. What about having a single direct path for getting answers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I encourage people to actually have a visual map of that communication flow for your organization. And this is per platform. So again, how do we get feedback from the residents if they are involved in that solution at all, and staff members? If you have 20 communities around the country and you've got this application deployed, you need to be hearing back some way from staff that are using it and from residents. And then you need to have a process for, tracking those and actually closing that loop and going back and saying, yes, we reviewed your request. It could be a request, for a new feature, or, hey, let's change how this works. So then the committee can say, yes, this is a great idea, I agree, or we've received this from a bunch of people, and then they go and talk to the vendor about it. Or they might just say, you know what, thank you, but we're not going to move forward with that request. But having that communication flow, it makes everyone feel like we didn't just dump a tool off, at their doorstep, sent the vendor over to train them on what the buttons do, and then just never came back again. That creates orphan technologies. It's like, we're the heroes. We bought this tool for you. See you later. Why aren't you using it? So having that communication flow, and there's ways to do it. It does not mean that leadership or a director or manager is going to have a million people knocking on the door. You need to have a champion at each community, a resident champion, and meet with that resident champion and say, your job is to hear the residents, consolidate the feedback, and give it to this staff champion at the community and review it together. And then you funnel that up. And speaking of committee and who's on these committees, I do think it's platform based. So, you'd have like an Accushield committee, a EHR committee, and then you definitely want some representation from the field, of course, and I recommend rotating the individuals on the committee as well. So you do, especially the representation from the field. So rotating out those members every year or two. And you're really going to continually know what the real deal is, out in the field with that platform.
Absolutely. TK, what are your thoughts about that? And, how do you create a committee for feedback in that way?
Yeah, great question. And so, in my last company before I joined Accushield, I asked people to join committees. Those are the folks that want to give you the feedback. When you walk into a building and someone stops you and says, this program drives me nuts, ask them to join, because they're going to have the feedback you want to get. Mm-hmm. I do think, to Katie's point, the follow through and execution is probably the most vital piece. Your ability to show your staff and your workforce and whoever else is involved that you're listening to what they say about the tools they use, it's going to make them want to be more engaged. I also recommend having or considering, based off the platform, committees by departments. If one department uses a solution in a way that the other department doesn't, try to branch off and have subcommittees. Their utilization of the system is just as important as clinical, for example, if we're talking about life enrichment. So consider multiple committees as well. And then the other thing I would consider while you're doing all of this is, what data are you using throughout that process? Aside from just feedback, are the outcomes with metrics looking like they should? Those are things to consider as well.
And what about when you start adding in integrations like Google reviews or the use of Open Table in your dining room, for instance? How does that impact the use of the technology? Katie?
So I think when you're utilizing these outside technologies and integrating those in, again, you just want to make sure that you're aware of who your stakeholders are and make sure that you're communicating with them. So when I think about like an Open Table, I would imagine that this could be a really great thing for families and visitors that are coming to dine with their family members living at the community, or even if you want to open up to seniors that are living outside of your walls, but you just want them to come experience some of your programs. I think that's an opportunity with Open Table. And so you have to realize that your different stakeholder groups might have different needs and wants and requirements. And so making sure that your internal residents understand the value and can give that feedback about how it's working with, say, Open Table, for example, as well as external customers. And also, I know a lot of us are wanting to add these solutions because we know that the residents moving in want it. So you've got that balance of residents that have been here a long time with us, and then the new residents moving in who, I mean, my mom's going to expect to be able to make a reservation from her iPad when she moves in somewhere, you know, and she's 75. So, you know, we have to have these things waiting for them when they move in, right? But how do we balance that with existing residents? And we're never going to make our existing residents use technology if they don't want to. And it's not always based on age, it's personality. Like, you know, I mean, my husband doesn't want to like buy a drone and figure out how to fly it around. I'm not going to make him, you know. Maybe he just wants to like read the paper, you know, an actual paper. So we're not going to force anybody. So you have to have solutions that cater to our industry. And that's where some of like the open table solutions are a challenge, because we are going to accommodate our residents where they are and what they're comfortable with. And so the innovator, the solution provider needs to understand that. And a lot of times that doesn't happen with, you know, these third-party solutions.
Yes, I've noticed in the past couple of years, because a lot of times what happens is a community will ask me to explain this new feature to the residents and teach them, for instance, how to make an open table reservation, or teach them how to log into their Connected Living app and sign up for a Zoom class, because it's integrated directly into the technology. And sometimes it's just a matter of an educational standpoint and teaching it and explaining it so that people are used to it and they start using it.
Yep.
One of the features that I thought was just incredible was Accushield's use of a Google review. And can you tell us, TK, how that was implemented and explained at the communities?
Yeah, you know, it all goes back to the experience, explaining, you know, the purpose behind the solution. You know, what I recommend is, why are we doing it? You know, why is it important to our facility to capture your feedback? And in this case, with our Reputation Accelerator solution, it's about identifying the opportunities to make your experience as positive as possible. And that goes not just for residents and family, but also staff, capturing their feedback as well. So one of the things I encourage all providers to do is to lean on your vendors to help you with that messaging. You know, it's not always easy, and it's not something that we're all great at doing, because we're hyper focused on census and labor and all of that. So lean on your tech partners to help you create that message, and even provide you with the materials that you can hand deliver, you know, as folks move in.
Great, great. Well, I'm excited to see what Accushield is going to be doing in the upcoming future. Is there anything you want to tip us off to right now?
Sure, I would love to. So we are hyper focused right now, and it's not a new initiative in our company, but we're bringing more awareness to it. And that is resident social isolation, and really how providers can start using visitor data to identify residents that are at risk of social isolation. I will admit, as a former provider, I never really considered using visitor data to help with that. So we're really proud about what we can do there. We're also creating what we hope to become the largest volunteer network in the country, where we're going to help our providers fill in where family can't simply visit residents, and help reduce that social isolation risk. If anyone's interested in learning more, we invite them to visit projectlovemeter.com. You can also go to projectlovemeter.com/volunteer if you'd like to join our volunteer network.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I've been a big fan of the Love Meter for quite a while. And Katie, anything on the horizon that you want to share with us?
Well, I'm excited to host a session at Leading Age National on robotics. So we're going to have a great panel discussion there. So I hope to see everyone in Chicago. And I'm just excited to talk with those innovators and share some learning, so that the worst is when your robot becomes an orphan.
Yeah.
So we're going to help you not do that.
Right, exactly. And Katie, when people want to get in touch with you to ask any questions, what's the best way?
Sure, you can find me on LinkedIn, pretty easy when you type in my name. And then my email address is katie@brightsolutions.co. That's CO.
Thank you so much. And how about you, TK? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Sure. So also on LinkedIn, just search my name. Otherwise, tk.king, excuse me, at accushield.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for being my guests today. And I'm excited to see what the future holds for technology. And we want to also thank those of you who are watching and commenting. And if there are any topics you want to know more about, please go ahead and connect with me on LinkedIn. And we'll see you all back here next week. Thank you.